Okay, we are ready. We can start.
Hello, good morning, everyone, from wherever you are. I wish you all the best. Today, we have this talk about the wonders of the breath. Why I gave this title? In reality, the longer one is a journey into the wonders of the breath. Because really, generally, we give the act of breathing as something that is happening without our will to happen or not. We sleep and we breathe. We faint, but we breathe. Because it's happening. It's happening anyway. So we don't give very much importance in a way. Especially my understanding is that also in schools, in different institutions, there is not this attention, but breathing is a very act of life. If the first thing we do when you come into this existence, and the last thing we do when we go from this existence, in between is always inhaling and exhaling, millions of times, all the way through the life. Sometimes, according to certain practices or in some emotional state, we hold the breath. Holding the breath is enhancing, in a way, different kind of effect that we have on the breathing. And when we work at the level of the breathing, we influence the mind. Now there are infinite studies that prove that. Some studies have been calling breath the remote control of the mind, for example. Because there is so many things to say about this, but that would be going into a more kind of sophisticated take on different kind of studies. And as you know, every time something is coming out and is changing some perspective, but there are some basic aspects that are the foundation. My experience comes from having practiced first yoga in India, in the tradition, more traditional, what they call Hatha Yoga. Now we will see probably that also this name Hatha Yoga is bound to be understood in many different ways, where it's coming from, what it means. But in general, there is this understanding, for example, of yoga being okay, in many traditions, the posture, the position somehow is considered a little bit the focus. But when we go deeper, even in traditional Indian yoga, we can say the breath is important. Originally, most probably, the aspect of the position, there were not so many asanas and position and static or in movement, but was just to be able to sit in a comfortable and harmonious, coordinated way in order to practice meditation, very often also based on the breath. So after that, I learned Yantra Yoga from Chojan Kanor. And the Yantra Yoga, for me, my experience was different. Because in Yantra Yoga, there is movement instead of static position, as I learned in India. But especially, as per the word of Rinpoche, when was asked in an interview the difference between Hatha Yoga and Yantra Yoga, just to be synthetic, he said the breathing. So the breathing is what drives the practice of Yantra, is the inner soul that should pervade all the aspects of the practice of Yantra. And the body is something that helps shaping the breath, because the interdependence between the body and the breathing and the perception is something that is undeniable, is the way that it works. So in Yantra, the body is shaping what happens with the breath. And especially in Yantra, the aspect of the breath is focused on holding the breath. Because when we hold the breath, is considered in some way the most powerful internal respiration. Also, what is happening in exchange between cellular level is extremely important and enhanced. So the base to get into the holdings is the breath, because we inhale, we hold. And in Yantra, there are 4 different ways of holding after inhaling. And there is a way of holding after exhaling. So in all, there is 5 kind of holdings. But how we get into the hold, how we go out from the hold, that's in Yantra is called the fluid breathing. And the fluid breathing should have, per definition, different specific characteristics. Should be fluid, exactly. Should be smooth, should be long, should be not fragmented, and not controlled. For people who maybe know a little bit of Hatha Yoga and some tradition, there is one breathing practice very often called Ujjayi Pranayam that is a kind of controlled. So the fluid breathing is not. The fluid breathing should not be controlled. That in Yantra is called the indirect breathing and is not used very often. The way that all in the movement in general, almost totally, is just the direct breathing. Can be accelerated, can be made longer, but it's always the fluid breathing. Now, the other characteristic of the fluid breathing is that in the word should start from below and then is specified like the seed of the expansion of the breath should be just 4 fingers below the navel. And then move and expand upward. That's the inhale. The exhale would be reversed. From the top is moving down and finishing the exhalation. So this image that is given is like pouring water in a bottle. If you pour the water from the top, start filling it from the bottom. And when you pour the water out, it's starting in reverse from the top to the bottom. Not all, also in the tradition of yoga and maybe breath work, have this kind of indication. Very often, also, there is in many aspects, in many different systems, also exhaling, pushing up the diaphragm from the bottom and going out. In reality, when we breathe, we are not forcing the air to come inside. We are creating the space for the air to come in. That's what it is. In reality, it shouldn't be necessarily such an effort to breathe. And the other aspect is that we should breathe from the nostrils, not from the mouth. We can breathe from the mouth when it's necessary, if necessary, but the organs of respiration is the nose. That's where we are supposed to breathe from, because also it modifies the temperature, is the kind of filter, create different kind of chemicals that work when we breathe correctly from the nose. So that would be the organ of respiration. Sometimes exhaling from the mouth also can be useful. In some systems also they use that. Especially because if you exhale from the mouth with the pursed lips, like putting air in the balloon, what is happening? You make the exhalation longer. And that is very healthy. In actually, when we breathe really harmoniously, the tendency is of the exhalation to be longer. It's also related to the nervous system. When we inhale, we activate more the sympathetic nervous system. When we exhale, more the parasympathetic nervous system. The more kind of rest and digest, sort of. So the more relaxing. All this is very interesting because also the way we move our breath in our body activate different kind of aspect of your nervous system. For example, if we breathe correctly, diaphragmatically, the respiratory diaphragm, we activate the vagus nerve and so many things. The diaphragm is considered the second heart. Now, I cannot go too specifically on this aspect, but there is all this kind of incredible spreading of the aspect of the function of the respiratory diaphragm. Sometimes might be called in different names, but one that is sometimes called also the thoracic diaphragm. Depends who is which system and who is talking about it from different point of view. But this big muscle that stays here under, like a little parachute that goes down and comes up, inhaling and exhaling, inhaling and exhaling. If we use it well, as it should be, but if, for example, we breathe only in the chest and only from the mouth, then that cannot be the fluid breathing. The fluid breathing, when it's said, starting from below, it means a very active diaphragmatic breath. Now, this is very important to understand in the sense that that is one of the wonders of the breath, being able to breathe really nicely from below, if you want to be very simple, using well the diaphragm. Otherwise, the intercostal muscle, the auxiliary muscles, inspiratory, aspiratory, they are forced to do a job that is not just helping, doing the main job, and then get tired, and the diaphragm gets a little stiff. And so when this happens, what we do? And that's when I thought, starting from my experience in Yantra Yoga and practicing for some time, that I could try to find a way to help people understand and be able to experience a more fluid, coordinated breath. And that's why I came up with some kind of exercises that possibly the most simple from a little bit more challenging, so that people have some kind of taste of things, in order to help people unlock, re-experience a more spontaneous fluid breath. And when we start experiencing that, it's a wonder to see how interdependent is the breath with our body and with our mind. In Yantra, we talk about body, speech, breath, and mind, and are interdependent. Interdependent in the sense that all things should work together. The body is shaping the breath is activating the subtle energy of prana, and the mind can be relaxed and present and clear. That is the purpose, no? Being able to present and aware in our daily life. But we cannot all the time doing yantra on the street and this and that. But we can understand the essence of it, something we can bring that can be useful in daily life. And every time that you have the reminder in yourself, or if you're not always distracted, we can observe and discover maybe we are in a state of agitated, we are in a state of passivity, all these kind of different aspects. But then the breath is also helping us of having this presence. We focus on the breath. We remember to focus on the breath. And the wonders is that what I'm saying, in reality, there is an interdependence between breath and posture. In Yantra Yoga, the yantras shape the breathing, literally, because the shape of the body is influencing the breath. It's not a matter of becoming too much obsessed with that, but understanding how we can use it. So, for example, if we discover that we have a posture that was much closed and is not letting the breath open, we just try to open a little bit and discover how our breath is changing. But if you have, for example, some tension in the body, also some postural problem, if you understand, we can use the breathing to help us modify that, harmonize that. I very often speak of moving the body from inside with the breath. That's what I think also in Yantra should be. The breath should be the kind of force that is actually making the breath, making the movement smooth. Do you need, if we can use the strength of the breath, we need less effort with the body, and the movement is more harmonious. Not that there is a tension, but then automatically there is a kind of vigor, because energy is kind of moving more freely, is not blocked, is not interrupted, is not constricted. These are the subtle energy our work, no? And then we work with breath, that is called with prana. These days, everybody knows what is prana. But then, that is one aspect, the interdependence within the position of the body and the breathing. Then there is the reverse. The breathing influences the posture. If you breathe correctly, if we open our breath, our abdominal diaphragmatic breath, automatically the posture sets in. You don't have to try, for example, to be with your back straight. You feel yourself. The back is kind of so happy that it's aligned without the need of trying to make it align through the breath. That is, I have no doubt about that. So many experiences. So one thing is the interdependence between the breath and the body, the posture, the positions. The other is perception. Perception is done through the mind, through the senses. We can, if we want to really define these things, that is kind of a long and laborious thing, because the mind, what is the mind, what is the mind? So we go where is complicated. We keep some general assumption, no? The mind, the nervous system, the senses. And I like to consider this aspect that now is becoming more, let's say, mainstream, that is the interoception, proprioception, and exteroception, especially the aspect of proprioception and interoception, because it's the way you perceive the internal dimension. There is different ways of considering that. There are between the people who are neuroscientists, before were psychotherapy, psychology, and starting originally, I think, was just the heart and the guts, and then start expanding, and now there are different schools probably have a different way of looking at it, but just to have a general idea, the perception of the internal dimension, the internal organs, the internal dimension. But now they are starting to consider organs, the myofascial system, the skeletal system. So it's become a little bit not so, what is the word in English? Scontato in Italian. Well, not so given that is one thing or the other. Everything is in evolution from this kind of things and studies. But the point is that, for example, we influence our breath also, we can, with perception, with our senses, for example, with touch. We can. And also, obviously, with presence, with the focus of the mind, we can influence what we breathe. But we always do in reality, because when we are distracted and tense, of course, we influence the breath. If you are calm and relaxed, of course, we influence the breath. Now, when we say the breath, we should consider how generally is defined, because what we do normally, what I'm doing now that I'm talking, or without thinking about breathing, because even if we don't think at all, we breathe, that's why we are alive. That is called the tidal wave of the breath. So the natural spontaneous movement of the breathing. That we say natural and spontaneous, not so sure. Because natural evoke something that is how we should be able to have the movement of the breath when you are in an harmonious homeostatic condition, not transformed by too many tension. So when we say natural, there is the natural, and there is something that is spontaneously happening through our conditioning that is different. In any case, so there is the normal wave that we don't think, we sleep, we faint, and we breathe. And then there is the extra volume of breath. When we decide to take a deeper breath, that is intentional or triggered by some kind of something is happening. For example, fear, no? And then you breathe spontaneously fast, and we activate the sympathetic nervous system that cuts down digestion and everything, and all the energy goes because we are maybe to run away. That is different, but still is influences by the mind, no? And then, so the extra volume of inhale is active. We really have to inhale well. We have really to expand our rib cage, because ultimately that's what it is. Where we inhale very well, we have to expand the rib cage. We want to exhale really deeply, we have to pull it back, to contract. It's mechanical. The lungs, they have not volition. They cannot decide to expand or contract by themselves. They are prisoner inside. So it's all about the body ultimately, because also when you create tension, we contract the body, create tension in the body, we have less flexibility, and so on and so on. So the extra volume of inhale. Then when you have inhaled very, very, very much, then we exhale, and that is passive. That's why, for example, when somebody is also nervous, like this, take a deep and a long, nice exhale. Because exhalation activates more the parasympathetic nervous system, the more calm, as you described, calm and digest, rest and digest. No? While a sympathetic fight and flight, something like this, there are generally this kind of definition. So, and then you exhale passively and you go down again to the base, the base aspect of the breath. If you want to exhale deeper, then you have to act to really squeeze intentionally the rib cage, pull up intentionally the diaphragm, and then you expel the extra air you want to expel, so that the extra volume of exhale. Generally, we are only in the tidal wave of the breath, unless something happened that moved us to one stage or the other, or we practice. For example, when we want to do what in Yantra Yoga is called the fluid breathing, because it should be long and smooth, that is intentional. We have to have an extra volume of inhale. And when we say we want to exhale the impure air, no, then you have to go in the extra volume of exhale. You have to be intentional. And how we do that in general, using the body, expanding the rib cage with also movement that help us expanding the rib cage so that we can inhale more, and then control, squeeze the rib cage so that more air can go out. It's mechanical, really, in reality. So now we look this aspect of the movement of the breath, how should actually possibly be as an image. I generally use the image of an arrow that is starting from the navel, just below the navel, where there is an indication in the fluid breathing of yantra to start the expansion of the inhale, and then reverse from top to bottom when there is the exhale. So the image I have of the arrow, it means that we are not supposed only to breathe in kind of vertical, just going up straight. Something that many, I would take the liberty to say maybe most people do. Breathing, as it's called, vertically, not really using well the diaphragm. Because when we use well the diaphragm, the expansion should be also lateral. Not only also lateral, but you should feel the expansion in the dorsal. Now that we had COVID, and we still have it going around, but when first appeared and was so striking and so terrifying in a way, they discovered that they shouldn't let people that have difficulty in breathing face up, but had to face it face down, so that somehow by having a control of the abdomen by gravity and so on, and there was an expansion of the dorsal where, just for definition, there is a 40% of the mass of the lungs. So it's very important to understand that. If you want to breathe healthy, we should be able to activate well the diaphragm. There is a famous breath worker in the United States, and she uses the definition of lateral breathing or vertical breathing. Okay? So, since most of us are bound to breathe more vertical, we should try to learn to breathe more laterally. And honestly, that is as they say in English, is the game changer. Immediately, not only you feel that is much more easy to feel a smooth fluid breath, but also you feel much easier to feel yourself comfortable, for example. You relax automatically. In the posture, you might feel like you don't really need to think, I try to keep my back straight. But you might find yourself feeling that you are with the back straight, but no much effort. What I was saying, the wonders of the breath is that moving inside in a fluid, harmonious way can really influence what is happening in the tension of the body. It's like using the breath to move the body and allow to let go the tension of the body in the joints, in the muscles. Now, because there is this gentle stretch, sometimes stretch from inside. Sometimes we feel or think about stretching like something that should be forceful. Also, that is not exactly like this. There is a point where if you try to do it too strong, you have the opposite effect. So you have to kind of back off and let things move more softly. And if we can put the breath inside, everything changes, really. And you feel the things are moving and relaxing, but with energy. So there is this, and can activate, because you have to have some focus on that in order to apply. And that focus is presence, because you are thinking about doing something, no? And noticing the experience, that is awareness. So automatically, we found yourself practicing this. That is something that in life is kind of useful, because most of the problems that come to us are generated by distraction. That's a reality. When we are distracted, things happen out of our control, out of mechanisms that they take over by themselves, and without being necessarily very much aware of that. So when you have some tool that can help us having more presence and being able to stay in less distraction, is very useful in any aspect of life. Now, maybe at this point, I can try to do some little exercise, because theory is one thing and practice is another. Now I ask my camera to go back a little bit. Okay. And you use in this first experience, we use touch. Touch, now I cannot explain exactly scientifically how. A couple of years ago, I even asked a neuroscientist. I was told, we don't know. Now, maybe they know, explaining exactly the mechanism, why it's happening. But the point is that it is happening. No, in general, it is happening. So I've been telling you all this time the importance of a diaphragmatic breath. So using well the diaphragm, so to speak, it means that you should feel something moving under your rib cage, because the diaphragm is here. So when we inhale, diaphragmatically should go down, and when you exhale, should go up. More or less, that's the movement that it does. Since nothing is activating everything in the guts, in the nervous system, and is going up and working with the brain, because everything is interconnected. And now, if you are interested in exploring this aspect, you can find many, many studies about these things. And also the interdependence between the breathing and emotions. Rinpoche was saying, no, if you're nervous, you breathe nervous. If you're calm, you breathe calm. And we have done some experiments, I know years ago in California. They got a group of people that were in different emotional states. They were nervous, they were calm, they were happy, they were in different emotional states. And they record the pattern of their breath. How were they breathing? What is happening in their breath? What was activated in which way? And then they took another group to control what was happening and so on. they're absolutely unaware of what they did before. And they instructed them to breathe in that way. And basically, they developed that emotion. If they were breathing in a calm way, they became calm. They were breathing in the pattern of the nervous people, how they were breathing, they became agitated. So definitely, breathing and emotion are connected. So now you can sit possibly with the back a little straight, otherwise it's complicated even more. And as straight, the point is you try to sit the way you feel comfortable. Try not to have a preconception of what should be and how should be. You just feel comfortable. You say, okay, I feel comfortable. And observe the breath without trying to change it. You don't change anything. Now think, I want to breathe in the abdomen. What Fabio was saying, I want to try to breathe kind of from below the navel up, not bloating the belly. That we call belly breathing with a way of defining it. I find a little bit misleading. No, try to breathe in the abdomen. Try to do it. And observe if you can. If you can or doesn't happen. Somehow you try and you feel something jumping in the abdomen or the tendency of pushing out the belly. That is not an expansion of the abdomen. No, that it means if this happened that you have not been trained to do that somehow. No? So that's what happened. The problem when this happens is that when you then try to come up with the breath, what happens, you tend to tense the back, the shoulders start to go up, sometimes even to close, and also the head tends to go back because you kind of feel you want to open the throat, and maybe sometimes also you want to open your mouth to help you breathe. No? Now, put one hand on your belly button, on your navel, and now try. Breathing only from the nostrils. Try to do that. Probably it's easier to do it. Now I don't have a feedback, so I don't know. I'm talking to shadows in the upper space. But probably my experience it is, having done this for some time, that actually something is more easy. You can feel you can somehow. That's why what I asked the neuroscientist, why? And she said, we don't know. Maybe now they know. But there is this aspect of proprioception, interoception, and also there are systems that sometimes are not so mainstream, where there is this understanding of total interconnection. And so something obviously is activated through perception and is activating some response that activates in this way the fact that we can then automatically feel that we are expanding better our abdomen. And so we are using the diaphragm. So now we go a little step further. You put again your hand there, but now concentrate in feeling probably the heat of your hand on your abdomen, on your navel. You breathe. Probably you can breathe in the abdomen. And then feel this little nice heat on your abdomen, and then let go your hands, but keep perceiving, focusing your attention to this still heat being there. Probably you still can expand the abdomen. But for example, now think of something else, whatever you want, even I don't know, maybe, chissà, depends from where you're from. You talk to somebody and you look around, you get intentionally a little distracted. Okay, we should know very well how to do that. Eventually you're distracted and then try again. Probably it's not so easy if in reality it doesn't really happen. But now that we have activated somehow that presence, now try to focus your active presence on the navel. You really focus on the navel. Maybe you can tell yourself, navel, navel. Focus on the navel. And then try to expand. Keep your presence there, a little sharp. Probably you can. Less, maybe, but there is still some action. Now, I'm not pretending that some magic is happening just because we are doing this exercise. But what I want you to have in insight is the power of how we guide our presence. That is the point. Where we focus our mind, something happens. And if we don't, something happens. So between presence and distraction, there is the universe. That is the point I want to make. So that's, for me, is already a wonder that I can influence the way we breathe by focusing the mind, by activating perception, not only with mechanical tools, that are positioned, that are very interesting, we always will do a little bit of that now. But why I feel that is so important? Because if for you is working, you discover that it is working, and now we do a little more of this, you know that you are totally free. I mean, you find a little stressed, or you want to nurture a little bit the nature of your fluid breath, a calm, smooth breath that helps you with your posture, with your also body tension and so on. You're not limited in any place, in any time. For example, you are on a bus, on a train, you put your hands like this, like if you are relaxing, and you will relax more because you can activate a little bit the abdominal breath. Who is not seeing anything? And when you are a little experienced, you just focus your presence. Some stressful situation or something, you're not abandoned. You don't have to be passive. Through breath, you can be active. You can change the dynamic. For example, once I did a course for some people at the university, and somebody asked me when they had to talk what was the something they could do for feeling more relaxed and focused. Well, these days sometimes they speak of the power pose, no? This position like this. If you look from my point of view, and now we can do it, if you do like this, no, what happens? Physically, what happens? First of all, we activate, we have the possibility to activate a diaphragmatic breath. And if you put the hands here, it's even more effective than on the navel, because we'll drive your breath more to the side, a really nice diaphragmatic breath. The elbows like this allows you to expand well your sides. It means you can breathe, as I'm saying, like the arrow. You feel the expansion of the breath coming up, but you feel it going to the side and actually to the back. That is a very good, fluid, expanded breath. You take, even if you want to be active, you take a couple of 2 or 3. Breathing like this, and then observe your mind. Doesn't have so much movement. Can be more focused. You can feel a little more relaxed, but not in the way passive. Relax, ready. Maybe now I'm just magnifying a little bit, no? Because I have a little bit of training, so maybe when I do it a little more expanded. But really, if I look from the lens of my understanding, that's what is happening. Or at least what this position done like this can make happen, can help make happen. For example, that, and then you are not conditioned, as I said, but circumstances. For example, another thing, this is very common to do this. No, you see also in many yoga books and things that this is very popular. So it means the way I suggest eventually to use it is to focus on this hand when you inhale and this hand when you exhale. So we tend to activate the abdominal from below, the breath from below when you inhale. But with the hand here, you also activate the expansion of the upper chest. It's very important because when the air is coming in the upper chest, if it's going vertical, it tends to block your throat and becomes indirect, contracted, and then you feel almost the glottis closing, no? And tension creating. But when the expansion comes, should go and help you expand, opening up the upper chest and expand and inside the shoulders and make some nice working and relaxing inside the shoulders. So this could help to do this. So if you use to focus your mind there when you start inhaling and then here, and then exhaling, focusing here, letting go the exhalation without dropping the posture. And then you can have a very nice, smooth breath. Exhaling from the top, now there is, as I said, a little bit different opinions. And they have different kind of characteristics. Maybe in yoga, the most used is the other one. Also the exhalation starting from below. But in Yantra Yoga, that where I found my source of practice and we could say inspiration and insight, is from the top to bottom. That is supposed to be in reality the less manipulated of the mechanics of the breath. In a way, the most natural, as is most natural to breathe abdominally than to breathe just in the chest. That's nature. So the other thing that's important to understand, and I already said it, is the importance of the expansion of the torso. That we expand the breath in the dorsal. Now I'm trying to put in different experiences because it's a talk, but a talk without experience for me is, I don't know, I prefer, even if it's just a talk, having some direct experience is more interesting. So having an insight to the potentiality of breath and what can be used for and what is influencing. Then if you get inspired by this experience and some of the things that I said, you can go and find yourself more detailed things about science and things like this. Now there is so many infinite studies, even to the most detailed thing. No? Again, especially after COVID, there was an awakening that we have actually lungs and they are necessary to breathe and to live. And so some now breath works. Now everybody is a breath worker. There is some more established systems and others pop up like mushrooms here and there because honestly, there is a market and there is the market, then why not? But important that you find for yourself something that is working for you. Some people like something more challenging. Some people like something that is simple, something that in any moment you can pull back to. If you want to train, if you want to find a little more peaceful condition, if you want to find a more sharp perception, you can do this all with the breathing, really. Now, for example, the dorso. The dorso, as I said, the general definition that I found also in yoga Bibles and things like this is the definition of the phases of the breath, like diaphragmatic or abdomino-diaphragmatic, abdomino-intercostal, intercostal, chest, upper chest, generally, sometimes also 3 of these, sometimes more. But if I have to refer to these more simply, I say lower, medium, and high. Otherwise, you can say clavicular breathing. It means where you feel expansion provoked by the breath, not that it actually goes there something, no? But rarely has been, I've seen talking about the dorsal breathing. It means that you feel an expansion generated by the breath in the dorsal. But it's very important. It's very important. One thing, because I told you, no, about how important is the lungs are expanded in the back, but also for the posture is fundamental. And so, and when we are able to expand well the dorsal breathing, actually it makes everything easier. Because sometimes I have the idea that we have a perception of the breath like being something bidimensional. Maybe I'm wrong, but that is happening in the front of our body. Mostly because maybe we have the senses, the doors of the senses in front, and we take life in this way. But breath should be like a sphere expanding. And so also we have the perception of our dimension is really different. But when the dorsal is expanding, the sides are opening, it is almost impossible to feel that your breath is blocked in the glottis, hence the throat. It's almost impossible because it's really working on the frame. When you are expanding the frame and creating this space, the air is coming in without effort. That's actually how we breathe. We let the air come in. The lungs are a reservoir, no? But, for example, in Yantra, there is this principle of the impure air, impure prana, connected to the state of mind, to different kind of aspect. And this is important, that is connected with a very nice and long exhalation. When we do a very long exhalation, we help clearing that, but in order to do that, we need a nice and long inhalation. Especially long inhalation that is bringing, well, the air down to the lower lobes. If we are able to do that, we are not going to produce so much impure prana, because also it's connected to our state of mind. If you're nervous, we breathe in a very contracted and poor way. We don't use our respiratory system very well. And then, of course, there is all these things that also the physical level, what is happening from the point of view of the carbon dioxide, oxygen, all this function and the intracellular, they don't happen the way they should happen exactly well. So this create a pattern of respiration that is not virtuous. And if we have a respiration that is more coordinated, then this can become, when we can train in a certain way, with perception, with the mind, with the position of the body, get to a point where our wave, the tidal wave of the breath, becomes more harmonious. And that is the real benefit. When the way we breathe normally is more focused and relaxed, and everything, honestly, in our condition gets better. But at least when we can remember and we have very simple ways of influence the movement of the breath, at least we can interrupt eventually this maybe not really so virtuous cycle of the breath, and things change. Because also when we have this experience, we have this memory, and so we are creating somehow a new memory. And if we nurture this new memory, we can make it stronger and then can become more of a habit. Or it's just sufficient that you direct your presence and automatically things can have a change, can have a more coordinated aspect of the breath. So the dorso, we can simply do even simply like this. For example, now I'm sitting down, maybe if you are sitting on a chair is a little different. I could explain about the posture and also sitting on a chair, but then that would be in the course of Respira because I cannot really do everything here. So even like this, even you hug a little bit yourself, even if you have a chair, you go facing the back of the chair, maybe you put a pillow and you hug that, no? Or even really literally, you take a pillow and you hug that pillow again, no? And then you breathe and you feel your dorsal expanding. Try to keep, if you have the tendency of tense your mouth, try to keep it half open. Take a long breath from the nostril with the mouth slightly open. It comes in a little air, don't mind. Okay. And then, just after doing this, observe how you feel. Observe your spine. If it doesn't, it find eventually a little bit straighter, or at least with more ease. Already can happen simply opening the dorsal, helps aligning the back. When I'm supposed to finish? 1 o'clock, yeah. Okay, so this is something very simple. And now we go to see something a little more interesting in a way. Okay, now I am sitting like this. I cannot really be at the same time into different places. But if you can sit like this, or if you are on a chair, you can put your hand on the front of the chair and open your knees. Open your knees, and if you are sitting, you do like this, and then you drop your head and breathe. Keep the mouth relaxed. If you want, you can use this hack, they call it these days. Do like this. Like if you have a little balloon inside your mouth. Then you have to breathe from the nostril. Probably you breathe from the abdomen. Yes? Yes? If nobody is answering. Yes? Now do like this. Do the same position, but do like this. The head back, the shoulder in front. Now you don't breathe in the abdomen so much, no? You breathe more in the chest. The position influences the way we breathe. But interesting is that even not so small changes influence that. Now I don't know if you have possibility, but there is a position, it's called the cat. If you have possibility of doing it, it is like this. It is like this. The hand in front of the knees, the feet can be up or down, and you stay flat. Just flat. Start with the feet down and you breathe from the nostrils. Try to take a little deep breath, not just shallow. And you generally feel an expansion of the middle of the torso. Now, if you point your toes, more or less is the same. You feel an expansion in the middle of the torso. But And if you move your hands 45 degrees out, again, doesn't change much. You can breathe normally, and now and then taking the deeper breath. Also, this will open up your breath, you will see. But now, instead of staying like this, go back to the starting position, feet down, hands just in front of the knees, and move down your navel, arching your back, and bring up your head, lifting it up. And see where you breathe, where you feel the expansion of your breath. Again, you can notice it much more when you take a deeper breath, just to be sure that you have a nice expansion. Breathing from the nostrils. And generally what happens, you feel an expansion in the abdomen. But now, point your toes. Just point your toes and see what happens. It's the back that is expanding, the upper chest that is expanding. But now, even more impressive, now you, like did before, move the hands 45 degrees out. Is going back in the abdomen. Okay. Then we sit as before, normally, and observe your breath. Just relax and observe the breath. If you feel that your breathing is starting below, expanding to the side, coming up to the chest and not blocking the throat. You feel that is fluid, not jumping. And maybe as a bonus, that your back feel comfortable and straight without effort. This is the fluid breathing. Anything in between that has some of these characteristics is a good experience. And if you serve the mind when the breath is like this, becomes more calm. Not dull, but more calm. Now, just as the last thing, we do something of this kind. We can also do it sitting on a chair. Actually, I do it sitting on a chair. Okay. Sitting on a chair, if you want to have an experience of what I said, a more breath is also open to the side. When you want to do some breathing exercises, don't stay like this, or maybe even like this. If you stay like this, you induce more a chest breath with the modification of the posture. If you only breathe very, very little, doesn't matter. But generally, you focus more on the chest breathing. If you open the feet like this, and set the camera following the feet now, and the knees open, you help opening up more to the side. So you have a more smooth abdominal breath. Ma, the exercise I wanted to show you, you can also stay like this, is to grab your shoulders in this way and try to have a real contact of your elbows to your chest. So against, it's not super strong, but focused. And then you breathe from the nostrils, mouth relaxed. If you keep the mouth relaxed, we are really keep attention, not to tense the jaws, or you can have the feeling that you have some little water in your mouth. So you keep the mouth, the teeth slightly open, the mouth with the lips relaxed, not closed, tense. You do like this, automatically you root more easily the breath in the diaphragm. There is evolutionary, there is a connection between the throat and the diaphragm. In reality, there is 4 or 5 different kind of diaphragms that connect and vibrate together when we breathe also correctly. So we are like this, and then we breathe from the nostrils. And you might feel actually your breath expanding mostly in the front part of the body, in the abdomen, but in the back, coming out and expanding up to the shoulder blades. This is a fantastic exercise to train to open the breath. And it's also interesting to see when we do this, and we do really a very full breath, that you feel is really coming up to the shoulders and opening up the shoulder blades. But if you want to talk, you can talk. You can bring it up that more you can't, but doesn't block your glottis because it's expanding the rib cage. So in this case, you don't block. Even if your shoulders are closed, you don't block your glottis. You can go up to where you want. You still can talk. Still can feel that you are free. Your throat is free. Another interesting thing is that we inhale. When you feel you have complete inhale, now you lift your elbow, shoulder level, and breathe more from the nose. And you see you can. Now you're totally completed the expansion. expansion in the dorso, expansion in the front. If you let go, you feel that your shoulders are open. So here is not blocking anything. And with simple exercise, you can train so well the expansion of your breath. So well. And then when you exhale, to help you exhale from the top, start exhaling, bringing down the shoulders, the elbows, keeping the back straight. And that will help you exhaling from the top to the bottom. And now the last thing, always with this exercise, you inhale. When you feel that you have inhaled completely, you feel okay, it's finished. Again, you go here and do a nice inhalation. Strong, a little quick inhalation. And you feel like the air is moving down. Now you feel like the air is going down. So this is interesting because when we do this, it's called sigh. When we do that, it's very, very possible that we get to feel well the lower lobes of the lungs that are actually the biggest. And this very nice, interesting, useful exercise to do to also train to breathe in a more natural way. Slowly, slowly, we make also our tidal wave become more coordinated, more virtuous in a way. Just try to use more natural. From my point of view, when we eliminate the blocks that condition our breath by releasing tension in the body that condition the breath, and in the breath that has memory of wrong patterns, then is a kind of way of deconditioning also some yoga practices. Why not? And then you can reuse what you want for whatever you want. But deconditioning these kind of constructions to modify or structure the breathing for a purpose, no? But find a kind of natural impulse of the breath to being unconditioned. And then when you have this seed, we have this seed, the experience of this seed. If you want to apply different methods, we know we have this seed inside. And then you can accelerate, decelerate, control, not control. But then we, in that time, in that case, we can really use that, any method that will have this seed inside. And this, I think, would be really important. Okay, I think that I finished exactly in the time. But if there is eventually the possibility and people want like this, having a couple of questions, I can stay a little more, but only if it is not interfering with other programs and with people lunch and everything. Otherwise, for me, it's fine. I salute everybody and I wish you all the best, all of you.
Yes, actually, we have time for questions, and if people want to ask, they can just unmute themselves and ask in Zoom.
I see somebody talking, but I don't hear.
Fabio?
Now I hear.
Could you please show the whole exercise which you showed last with inhaling and exhaling?
This one?
Yes.
Okay. First, we did inhale and exhale in this position a few times. Then you inhale, you suspend the breathing 1 moment, lift and breathe again. That is the one like a sigh that brings also the air surely very well into the lower lobes. And then you can simply do it in one go. Inhale. When you feel that you are expanded back, let the elbow lift and come all the way up. And then when you go down, when you're up, first start breathing from the top and finish well in the abdomen. If we want, we can, when you are here, kind of put a little pressure in grabbing. If you grab like this, like a little pressure, it squeezes a little more the rib cage, so expels more air. So it's a kind of expelling also this la stantia, the stale air. And then when you let go, you have an impulse even nearly stronger. I think the exercise is very simple, but quite effective.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Bye-bye to Sweden. Okay, if there is no more question, we go having lunch.